what's checking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Orangebloods Modcast. I'm Jeff Ketchum, joined by Jason Sucamel, Anwar Richardson, and of course, Alex Dunlap. Do us a solid, like this video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, tweet this out on your social media, get involved. It's your channel too. We're talking Texas football today. We're also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this edition of the Modcast brought to you by DeadSoxy. Go to DeadSoxy.com and take advantage of that winter sale that's heading into summer. Bundle up, save big, get 50% off of bundles, and there's buy one, get one free single pairs as well. Just use that promo code Orangebloods. I've got a pair of DeadSoxys on right now, as a matter of fact. Fellas, you guys were all at practice today. The Longhorns back at it. You guys weren't the only ones back at practice today. Malik Murphy back at practice today. Jonathon Brooks back at practice today. Anwar, I'll come to you first because you participated in the post-practice scrum with Steve Sarkeesian talking to the media after returning from spring break. Your big impressions from today? It's funny, you and I did the overreaction show yesterday. Spent a lot of time talking about quarterbacks and running backs, and we got some answers today.
Yeah, so, a couple of things, obviously, with him being back, and Malik obviously getting the second team reps. That obviously pushes, Arch down to the third team. And so, now the receivers that Arch was throwing to is a little bit different. I think a couple of things that kind of stood out was, obviously I asked Sarkeesian about it. Right, let me start from a playing perspective. Malik looked fine when he was out there, so let me start there. I didn't see anything as far as any lingering, any limping, like anything like that. He was running around, he was joking, he was making moves, doing spins and everything like that. So, I'm no doctor, but he looked pretty good when he was out there. I asked Sark about it in his press conference after practice. He talked about how good it was to have Malik out there, because it was a kind of a two-part question that I asked him. And he did talk about how good it was to have him out there. Talked about the setback that he had towards the end of winter conditioning. He said they just wanted to be a little bit cautious with him in going forward. So we did talk about that. The second part of the question, though, that I had for him was, does he really want or is he expecting Malik to push Quinn, for the job, the number one job? And his response was, can Malik push Quinn? Of course he can. How far can he take it? It says Quinn's job is to keep raising his level of play. So when he's talking about Malik, can't catch him. And he said that should be at every position across the board. And he really started getting into, now is not the time to tell anybody that, someone's the number 3 guy or anything like that. He wants every position to be open, including quarterback. So it was good for Malik to be out there. It's good for Jason, who probably felt a lot better at the end of the day, knowing that Malik was out there. But those are kind of the initial impressions and things that occurred.
Jason, I'll come to you first, or next, I should say, but not necessarily to talk about Malik. It's funny, we've spent so much conversation talking about Malik and not being out on the field, and Arch Manning in his first few practices. There's a lot of buzz. He's been working with the twos. Not a lot has been written about the starting quarterback, Quinn Ewers himself. Not that he's been completely ignored. My goodness, our lead section in the war room on Friday was about Quinn Ewers, and there wasn't even practice. So it's not that Quinn's not getting a lot of attention. It's just that we have been looking at some of these younger guys on the roster, wondering, when, again, Malik would return and how Arch has looked. What's been your impression of Quinn Ewers, though? For those that read the practice report today and didn't see a lot of Quinn talk, is it still too early for you to draw any conclusions off of how much improvement he's made, or to the naked eye already you can see some differences?
Yeah, let me get to that in a second. On Malik, I want to echo first what Amar said. I was watching Malik, and not only was he, like Amar said, a full participant, he's dancing out there. You would never know this dude was at all limited. So, like Amar said, I'm certainly no doctor, but looks like he's close to 100% to me. And then Alex, my question to you, hey, you want to take a bet on whether Ewers or Malik is a starting quarterback? I'll give you 20-1 odds. No.
Yeah, I'll take 21 on any you give me. You can give me 20-1 that Jonathon Brooks will be the starter. I'll take.
I was going to say, I think Alex will take 20-1 odds on just about any bet. But Catch. I think it's to answer your question about Quinn. I think it's kind of in the middle a little bit. Like they haven't even had a scrimmage yet. Okay, I mean, listen, they have a scrimmage this weekend. He goes out there and turns the ball over 3 times, and everything we've seen through the week before spring break and today and the rest of this week, then it's all kind of washed off the board. I'm not expecting that though. The practices I was at before spring break, not as much today. I didn't notice him doing as much kind of work today specifically with the quarterbacks and the receivers. But I know before spring break, again, we're not watching one-on-ones. We got to see a little bit. We're not watching full team scrimmage workouts, but man, I tell you what, the coaches sure seemed excited about some of the throws he was making. And, they were doing, I just remember one of the practices are doing kind of where they're rolling left and kind of throwing across their body. And I wrote about it in my 3-2-1. It was almost like a Patrick Mahomes type throw where I can't do it on camera, but your legs are crossed and you got to throw against your body. And Quinn just threw a dime and, had the coaches just yelling his praises like, hey, great ball 3. And I mean, just everybody out there seems to be really excited about it. He seems loose. Him and Maalik today were joking around. I mean, just kind of doing some different stuff with their body language where, Maalik was acting like he's getting his heart going and Quinn's out there. And Quinn was dancing with Maalik, if you can believe that. So he seems loose. He doesn't seem like a guy to me that has any worries about looking over his shoulder. Again, I think we'll get our first true feel of things this weekend, or I'm assuming they'll have their first scrimmage this weekend. But through the first, week and a half of practice, yeah, he seems pretty relaxed. It seems like he's tossing the ball around pretty well.
Alex, same question to you. Just your general impression of a guy who is the most important player in the program at this point.
I've always thought Quinn looks really good in practice. I mean, I've thought, I remember Jason and I having this conversation last year, right? Saying it's just funny if you were to see, Quinn and Hudson Card at a college pro day, just throwing against air, like you don't have to squint to just kind of imagine that, right? Like these guys look good throwing against air, man. Quinn always has to me. So I guess I would be kind of disingenuous in saying that I feel like he's improved a ton. To me, it's like Jason said, the improvement that I'm going to see from Quinn Ewers needs to come whenever he's going against live competition. And we just haven't got to see enough team drills yet. These guys have not been in a scrimmage setting yet. Team drills, of course, can be like scrimmage settings. I'm sure when they went to team in that one padded practice on the Friday before spring break started, I didn't necessarily hear anything that was concerning from the way he might have looked versus pressure. So, to me, I think it's going to take more than just seeing him during practice look really good and look like $1 million for me to say that, he's distinctly turned a corner, just because I've never thought that Quinn Ewers looked like he had trouble in this kind of setting.
Onward back to Sarkeesian. Anything else of real note outside of the quarterback discussion? I saw those quotes and you kind of mentioned it, where they want to push Quinn, but Quinn's job is to stay ahead of them. And if he does it, it's kind of his job. Anything else jump out from Sarkeesian's remarks today after practice?
So just to throw a monkey wrench and everything, he did say that today was Arch's best day of practice.
Dude, it was great. I mean, Onwar, you and I both on that one pass to that Jaden Alexis pass on the deep post. You and I both were just like, oh my God. And he had the other one right before we got in, the deep ball from half field down to Jonte Cook that was just a dime too. I mean, it's an interesting situation Texas has with these quarterbacks, because if you see Malik Murphy out there, if you just see him out there, you look at him, like you said, running around, flying around the place, and you think, my God, dude, this guy's, I mean, he looks like a monster, dude. Like, that's an athlete right there. I'm sure we'll talk about how he looked and everything else, but yeah, that's interesting, Onwar, that I hadn't heard that Sark had, talked about Arch. And like I was saying about Quinn too, I mean, Arch has always looked pretty good, so, it doesn't surprise me to see it. But definitely an interesting note there. I didn't mean to cut in on you.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. No. I appreciate you adding that in. It's all good. He's talked. When he talked about the edge position, he talked about Ethan Burke, feeling like he's done a really good job, over there. He talked about having some position flexibility with Jere Bledsoe. He said he liked the prospect. It was very interesting wording. He said he liked the prospect of Colton Vasek, at this moment, which sounds more like potential, more so than anything else. But he did talk about, he does want to get more pressure and generate more pressure on the as far as the pass rush is concerned, and creating some more negative plays. So I'm just kind of going through that. So that kind of was something that was interesting. Talked to him a little bit about, guys coming in, having that, who are here now, the freshmen, as opposed to the guys who come in a little bit later. And it's interesting. He had a good, interesting thought, because he said, while there is an inherent advantage, obviously, of being here early, he said, that's not always a guarantee as far as it checks the box, because he said Kelvin Banks is a guy who came in late and ends up pretty much being a kind of a day one starter. You kind of use Xavier Worthy as a guy who also came in, later, as opposed to early enrollee, and ends up being a guy that starts from day one. So he goes, it's not going to be 100% geared towards, you just being here early. That's going to kind of check all the boxes. So I thought it was kind of good as far as that's concerned. Those are kind of the major things. He did like the development of Mo Blackwell. He also did say that David Benda has had the best all season that he's had since they've been here. So he's really happy as far as the linebacker position. He really feels like there's a plethora of talent there. Way more guys to choose from than he's had, before. So those are kind of the things that kind of, stand out as far as what he said.
Was there anything that stood out to you? I'm going to ask this question of everybody. The thing that stood out to you the most today was what? Besides, obviously, the returning guys from injury. Onward.
Oh, I didn't know who was going first. Well, besides the returning guys, there was. Now you probably need to go to someone else on that one, because there were some guys that are there, but I'm also go to someone else and come back to me, please.
All right, Jason. The thing that stood out to you the most today was what?
I'm kind of cheating a little bit, but I am going to talk about the returning guys. I'm kind of distracted. I'm looking at pictures I took, and I'm looking at my roster. And when you see Malik Murphy out there, Quinn Ewers is a big dude, right? Arch Manning is a big dude. Malik makes those guys look small almost. I was looking. Arch is listed at 6'4", 212. Malik's 6'5", 235. There's no way if Arch is 6'4", Malik's 6'7". There's no way Arch is 6'4". There's no way Malik's 6'5". Quinn's listed at 6'2", 204. Like Anwar said early, Malik's going to have to shake off some rust. But someone in the chat, Alan Carranza, how would you rank Quinn, Malik, and Arch Manning as natural throwers? That's put probably Quinn number one.
As a natural thrower?
Malik to me is 1A. He's right there behind him. And then, Arch has got all.
Wait, are you talking about arm strength, or are you talking about just their
probably arm strength? Yeah, just ability. I guess natural thrower of the football. I think Quinn and Malik are 1 and 1A. Malik's arm strength and his size to me are incredible. Arch, his ball placement. I think Arch's mental grasp for the game. Everything else is second to none. But I don't think he has the arm strength of those other two. And I don't think it's that close.
Okay. Oh, well. I'd have a different answer for that question.
We'll go for it.
We're waiting.
Well, Arch Manning. If what he said, he said, what is as far as natural throwers? Arch Manning was born to throw a football. It's like.
Well, so is Quinn Ewers. Quinn's been working on it since he was in diapers practically. But
I think
you're telling me you put those three in.
I think Malik Murphy has too, man. But Arch, just the ball placement,
ball placement. Sure, Arch is as good as any of them. Aside from maybe Quinn, arm strength, Arch. I will strongly disagree. Arch does not have the arm strength.
I'm not sure he does either. But I mean, I just think he's, but I mean, it's not all about arm strength. It's like you talk about a natural thrower of the football. It's like it's not just about arm strength. With the way that
arm strength and accuracy, kind of what natural thrower of the football is all about. I mean, what else is it?
Arm strength, accuracy, touch, velocity. I mean, I think spin. I think those are all things that are important.
It's interesting when I think of natural thrower of the football, I don't automatically think of arm strength first, because it feels like arm strength is its own kind of category. Otherwise, you would just say who has the strongest arm. So when I hear natural thrower, I tend to think of these other things. Accuracy probably being the biggest, right? Because if you're a natural thrower, that's the part of the game that probably comes with the most ease for you.
Yeah, if you have arm strength and you're not accurate, it doesn't matter. I mean, you got to have accuracy, obviously. Yeah.
And it sounds like Malik was a little rusty today, like you would expect.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these other guys have had a few practices to kind of shake any offseason rust off in terms of team workouts and stuff like that. Does sound like, Jason, that's the one area Malik will have to shake that off fast, because Arch is playing pretty good football right now.
He is, but you know what? He's playing good football. We're talking 4 practices in, and Malik's first practice back, they moved him right into second string. So, I mean, it tells me clearly it's not like he and Arch were splitting reps. I mean, that tells me, Arch has played pretty well, but that tells me they have a pretty good read that Malik's going to be second string. Will he hold on to second string? I don't know. Ask me a week from now, the story might be different, but that tells me pretty clearly it's not like Arch was setting the world on fire to the point where they said, okay, Malik, we're going to bring you back gradually, or we're going to split reps with you and Arch. No, they put Malik back as clearly the second quarterback in his first practice backs.
Anwar, I tend to hear that, and I'll get you. We'll toss it back to that question, because I saw your note that you've composed your thoughts. To me, Malik was always going to go back to second string, because if there was anything other than that, whether he's the second best guy or not, if he's not running the second string right now, it's basically a sign pointing to the exit door at that point. If at this point he's not in the second string position.
Yeah, you're just begging him to go to the transfer portal. You're literally just packing his bags and telling him you're out of here, because there's no reason for him to stay around if that's where it's at. So, right, wrong, or indifferent, this thing has got to play out going into the off season and of course training camp. But that being said, Malik Murphy is still a pretty damn good quarterback. I just, not to take anything away from Arch or anything like that. I think they have 3 good quarterbacks as it is. But Malik Murphy has also been here. He's been studying this playbook. He's been putting in the work. It's just been the injuries. But people I've heard talk to behind the scenes. In a perfect world, their thought process is, Quinn balls out this year, goes pro. Malik balls out next year, he goes pro, and then Arch has it for the next couple of years. So, in a perfect world scenario, the scenario that you won't necessarily hear behind a podium, that's the thought process about it. So, I know there's Arch mania, and you've got who's the guy from ESPN that was tweeting about Adam Schefter, tweeting about like quarterback competitions, like off of day one, and him and Quinn. And now, I think Arch still has to get past Malik, in my opinion, before we even get into that. And, in an ideal world, Malik is pushing Quinn to catch it. Even if he doesn't overtake him, he's still got to be good enough that if Quinn gets banged up and he comes in, that he's got to be able to, to perform.
The reality with Malik, though, is he's done nothing to suggest that he's even ahead of Arch yet. He had a very fragmented freshman season where, as well as anybody, asking Sarkeesian the occasional question about Malik Murphy. Sometimes Sark wanted to be asked, and sometimes he didn't want to be asked. And then a lot of that had to do with just flat out availability. He was the number 2 for the bowl game. Obviously he's been in this longer than Arch, but I don't know that there's a single marker that he could have put down beyond that little bit of experience that would definitively tell us he's definitely ahead of Arch.
Yeah, well, I would say that's probably fair. Other than just the veteran experience, and I say with veteran, just being here longer. But as far as who's better than who, time will tell as far as that is concerned. So just based off of who's been on campus longer, clearly you have to put Maalik at number 2, and you want to make sure that he's happy. But time will definitely tell in practice, who's the better quarterback.
It makes these scrimmages coming up a lot more fun, in that all these guys are talented. So it's now who performs whenever I think they're asked to perform. Anwar, as far as things that stood out to you the most from practice today, just circling back to that question, was there any one thing that stands out more than anything else?
I would say, well, one thing as far as scrimmages are concerned, I did ask Sarkeesian at the end of practice, and he said they're just going to put scrimmages with, not like every Saturday. They're just going to kind of mix them in within the given weeks. So it won't be like the training camp thing, which is kind of somewhat interesting. I was trying to get outside of, I always know like Alex focuses on line, offensive, defensive line. So he's got a really good eye for what's going on in there. So I was just kind of looking around as far as other things are concerned. And so I was really impressed. I sat next to Alex. I was really impressed by like Ethan Burke, as far as, standing out. And when you say stand out, it's a little subjective because we're not actually watching live practice. So, these are just more like observations more so than anything else. But I just thought from a physical standpoint, remembering what Ethan Burke looked like when he got here last year, and it's just really being able to kind of focusing on him a little bit more and laying eyes on him. I think he looks the part. Like he's all of 6'6" or so, 250-ish. He looks strong. I mean, he looks like a guy. Like he looks like, and not even a guy. He looks like that guy. So just looking at him perform, and again, I was comparing him to Colton Vasek, and Alex and I will disagree on this a little bit, but yeah, I just thought Vasek looks like a guy who needs to get in the weight room. Not anything disrespectful to him, because he's young. He's only been on campus for a couple of months. And I just thought the gap between the two of them just looks big. Like that, I thought that's what it looks like when you've been on a college campus for a good year. Ethan Burke is a guy that I just look at it and catch in the drills and how he performed. And I said to myself, okay, I see it. What did Alex say? You don't have to squint your eyes too much to envision it. However, Alex, that whatever he's saying it was easy for me to envision a guy that, even if it doesn't start, having an impact at some point.
Hey, Anwar, real quickly before we transition, couldn't agree more. And I took pictures of both, and they're in my photo gallery that I posted on Orangeblood. So if you're an Orangeblood subscriber, go check it out. I'm looking right now at Vasek compared to Burke, and I mean their body styles are so different. All of a sudden, Burke is so much bigger. Now Vasek is leaner; it's more lean muscle. But Ethan Burke, like, what'd you say they have him listed at?
It's 230 versus 250.
Yeah, and that's probably about right, man. I mean, Burke just looks a lot bigger, man. Like I said, Vasek I think has more lean muscle mass, if you will. But in terms of putting on the type of weight that is going to be able to handle the grind that you're going to have to handle if you're a consistent, day one starter or whatever. Yeah, Ethan Burke, man, he's really bulked up quite a bit and put on quite a bit of weight. Like I said, I'd like to see a little bit more lean weight. I think it's kind of a combination of two, and Vasek will get there. But I look at their arms right now. I mean, Vasek's arms are much leaner, but they're much smaller. But Burke is just big across the chest. He's got a little bit of a belly on him. He's put some.
That's what I was going to mention, Jason, is that from the naked eye, when looking at your pictures, Vasek looks lean, almost skinny, whereas Burke has a itty bitty baby belly. Like I wouldn't say
he came in lean like Vasek.
Yes.
So now he's just got to kind of fine tune it and find the middle ground. But he does. He looks. I mean, he's so much bigger than what I remember seeing him last year.
Yeah, that stood out to me for sure.
Alex, there was something in. So I'm a little bit like everybody in the chat right now. If I was on Orangebloods, I read all of Malik's stuff. I read all of Anwar's stuff. I read all of Alex's stuff. I read or looked at all the photos that Jason took. It's funny that you mentioned that, Jason, because that was literally on the tip of my tongue, was Burke just having a little bit of a baby belly. And I think I only noticed it because his photos are back-to-back with Vasic.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go from one to the other, it's a one little thing that you notice.
And as a guy with a beer belly, I'm not complaining about a baby belly, baby. Bring it on.
That's
my world.
There was something in your report that's really kind of caught my eye. And I wonder, I won't make you guess what you wrote that stood out to me. I'll just say it. The breakdown of the defensive line groups are interesting to me because, Anwar and I have been having this conversation for the last couple of days. First of all, that Jamon Tapp wasn't listed in your 3 deep that you listed, and that he's getting a little bit of work as an inside linebacker as well. Let me ask you, was that an omission of Tapp with the 3 deep, or in your mind at this point, is he not on the 3 deep? Is he a jack of all trades guy, moving enough back and forth that there's not a true? I mean, he's not even listed on the 3rd team at this point.
Yeah, like an omission, like I messed up and forgot him, or what do you mean?
I mean, I don't want to say it quite like that. I don't want to make a big deal out of it though, or even a baby deal out of it, and then you go, oh yeah, no, I could have just as easily have listed him as, 3rd team here.
Yeah, I mean, they were doing pursuit drills. They were out there. Bo Davis would get the little thing on the little football on the ground on the broom, whatever. He hikes the football. These guys, and then he like points one way, and these guys got to go run to the side right there with the front. You guys know what pursuit drills were, right? Like a guy runs up the sidelines, you got to take your pursuit angle to the sidelines. And so it's a good opportunity to at least see with the front 7 how they were doing these groupings. We got to see a few drills like that. And yeah, I mean, Jamon Tapp is number 17. He wasn't out there for that stuff in the first 3 groups. Neither was Colton Vasic. I don't necessarily think it's a situation where they're going to stay like that with Vasic for sure. I mean, he's just too, like Anwar said, everybody knows what the prospect of Colton Vasic is. I can understand that, yeah, he's a little bit smaller through his chest, his upper arms and things right now. But, dude, he still looks like a sleek. I mean, that guy he's a real ace to have up your sleeve as a program. Whether it happens this year or not, who knows? But I wouldn't put it out of the picture happening this year. Certainly not breaking onto the 3 deep. Ethan Burke broke onto the 3 deep last year, looking smaller than Vasic did when he first came in. So, but yeah, it was just interesting. So with the first group, they had they've been moving Justice Finkley over there to that edge spot that Ovi played last season, as opposed to backing up Barron Sorrell anymore. So that looks like Justice Finkley, Byron Murphy, the nose tackle, Tavondre Sweat, the defensive tackle, and then of course Barron Sorrell, the jack defensive end. Today, if you had the second edge guy behind Finkley, who I think is going to end up probably pushing Finkley, just based on what Onward had said, and just the fact he was so good last year on a limited sample, was Ethan Burke. And then interestingly, I mean, one of my takeaways is Aaron Bryant, number 53 at the second nose tackle, Alfred Collins, a defensive tackle. And then another odd thing was Vernon Broughton's lining up as that second jack end behind Barron Sorrell. So sort of Justice Finkley's role last year is what Vernon Broughton was lining up today in pursuit drills playing. And then the third group didn't involve I would have figured that 92 Vasic would have been out there, but the buck end with that group was Jerry Bledsoe. The jack end was Christopher Ross. Then the guys in the middle were Sadir Mitchell at the nose tackle, and then Zach Swanson at defensive tackle. So people always ask Zach Swanson. He came in as like an outside linebacker, defensive end type of player. He doesn't necessarily look that big, but I mean, last year I've noted the only time that he played was in the only time that he played was in a defensive tackle role, and that's where he was today, number 86. He's just kind of small for it. He's only 259 pounds.
Let me ask you guys this question. Changing direction slightly, although I have my mind on one thing. Having seen, I guess this is the fourth practice that UT's allowed the media to come in and see a piece of practice, not the whole thing, but certainly a portion of it. If I told you that Steve Sarkeesian could go out and sign one guy in the portal in May at any position to upgrade that position, either with a starter or somebody that could mix in with the starting group as a co-number one or a number two guy that plays a lot. Anwar, I'll come to you first on this. If you get one guy, they get to go after one position. No, you don't have to give a name. We don't even know who they might necessarily.
Is this player good? Is this player like above replacement level, like stud?
Be a good player that can come in and be better than what you currently have at any position.
Well, I know my answer. If you need to talk,
I mean, I think I'm going to go first just so you don't steal mine. Then
we all have the same answer, probably. But go, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think my answer would be easy. Then I'd bring in someone on that edge position that's proven that I know is going to be able to get the job done. That can check all the boxes. Like right now, we're projecting.
Just like Thornton and Ovi did.
Well, he said good. So
they thought they were good, right?
I said better than what you have currently.
Yeah. So, just if you're saying yes, to give me somebody that I know is going to check the box, have some guys that I'm projecting, I'm probably going to edge side.
Is everybody in agreement on that? Does anybody have a different?
I mean, it's the obvious answer, but the only thing I'm thinking is they're no good at it. I don't trust them to go find edge in the portal. You know what I'm saying? Like, if
good ones are hard to find.
At this point, I don't believe him. I don't think you can go out and find a good edge rusher in the portal just like that. So if it couldn't be edge rusher for me, it would be safety. But then again, I just you worry a little bit about. You just worry with Catalan. Have you guys seen him? Have you guys seen Catalan, number 11?
No.
I don't think I've even seen him. So, he'll be back. And so hopefully you could have the starters being him and Jaron Thompson. But it looks like they're going to have to start Keaton Crawford right now. And I would not be comfortable going into the season with Crawford being penciled in to be the starter. I think you probably, they feel better about that position, thinking that they can pencil in Jalen Catalan, but Crawford is a guy who, just if you look at last year, certainly not very productive at all. One of the higher missed tackle rates, allowed a missed tackle every, I guess not terrible, every 95 snaps, but whenever he was clearly targeted, he allowed a reception into his zones basically 2 out of 3 times, 66.666% of the time, and also was burned in coverage once every 63 snaps. So that snaps per burn rate was only second worst on the team behind Jameer Johnson, who everybody saw his struggles. So I think Keaton Crawford would be the one that I would worry about at safety.
Jason, what about you?
Yeah, pass rusher, defensive end would be the easy choice. Honestly, I don't even know. It'd be a distant second beyond that. I mean, safety, depending on Catalan. I mean, you could probably use another experienced linebacker, but, I'm assuming some of those young guys are going to play well. Jake Majors at center is a veteran. I mean, people have been trying to replace him forever, but, Jonathon Brooks is inexperienced, but I think they got talent at running back. So, to me, it'd be that edge pass rusher and then a pretty big gap to the next guy.
I'm on the same page with everybody. I think that it's hard not to notice that when you look at it, the depth chart on paper, it's Finkley, it's Burke, it's Bledsoe, and then it would be Vasic at that edge position opposite Sorrell. And those are all the guys from last year's class. Like now they're waiting for the light switch to come on one of those players to be, I think, the frontline guy. But really, they need two of those guys to grow up pretty quickly. It's hard to imagine, Alex, that any of those guys, I can't close my eyes and go, yep, someone in that group's getting 500 snaps this year. Whereas Obi a year ago got like 700 plus snaps, right?
Yeah, last year. Well, how many did Obi have? Obi 657. So, I mean, it's a ton of snaps. Golly, how many? Was that like the? I want to just sort it. It was the fourth most snaps on the whole team. There's no way that Justice Finkley's playing that many snaps this year, even if he stays over.
None of those guys.
You know what I mean?
Think.
Yeah, the edge is not going to be one of these spots like it has been during the time of Thornton and Obi. I don't think it can be like that. They're going to need to cycle through these guys to find out what they got in each one of them and hope they can catch lightning in a bottle.
I think the easiest position that you could find somebody that could come in and make an immediate impact would be as a linebacker. If Anthony Hill hasn't stepped up yet, with all due respect to what Sark is saying, I don't know what it means that David Benda's had the best offseason that he's ever had. Okay.
They're not going to give Anthony Cook the job, right? I mean, I always wondered whether or not they would. You know, that was a question I had coming into spring. Are they going to give him the starting job? I mean, doesn't it feel like he's going to end up starting? I mean, I'm not going to get off my priors on
position
this.
that you can go into the portal, and there's always pretty good players, like very productive players, weirdly at the schools that they've left. For whatever reason, they often are just looking for something a little bit more. The linebacker position always seems to have really productive guys. Sometimes they're a little undersized, not Diamontre Tucker Dorsey undersized, but a little bit undersized compared to what I think Sarkeesian and his coaching staff would ideally want at the position. But then I say that they've recruited some tweener type players to come in. The question is, and this really goes for every single position on the defense, are you stunting the growth of your young players by shoring up a need in the short term? Anwar, I think this coaching staff might say yes, but it's alarming for me, just looking at it from 30,000 feet up, that there's just so much unproven talent that has to come good on this defense immediately in order for them to not skip a beat from where they were at this point last year.
Yeah, the hard part, unfortunately, Catch, is that, most of the guys in the portal are kind of unproven talent, so that's kind of like the give and take. And I think Sarkeesian is he's made it he's reiterated more times than not that he's a little leery of portal guys and what they may or may not be able to bring to the table as far as like locker room and stuff is concerned, like what happened, at their previous destinations. And even talked about it again, like this spring when he was asked about it. And he still said like they'll get portal guys like here and there, but he said they're going to take less than most programs because he just wants to build a roster that he feels like is long-term sustainable. So, I just think that we'll see it here and there. And I'm sure after the spring, they'll kick the tires on one or two guys, but it doesn't seem like that is a thing I don't think the portal's ever going to be a thing with him because that doesn't see where his head's at.
It's funny though, all the portal guys that he had brought in previously, he mentioned as great locker room guys, even the Ben Davises of the world, the Ray Thorntons of the world. It was the two guys that he brought in from Alabama that he had experience with that turned out to be guys in the locker room that weren't great, that he had to constantly manage Agiye Hall, and that Jaleel Billingsley by the end of the season was a guy that wasn't even on the roster. Everybody else, it seems like, has been pretty good. It's interesting that they thought they could rehab the Alabama guys. When Alabama people were saying, don't touch these guys with 10-foot poles. You don't want to do it. They didn't fit Saban's culture. Sarkeesian took a chance on the guys that he had experience with. And I think now this year, I think that bad taste in his mouth from the experience from last year is impacting the way he views the portal. But it hasn't been anybody other really than those two Alabama guys that I think you would point to from the portal and say those guys didn't come in and, cause problems. There weren't issues. I can't think of anybody else.
Well, those were probably the two biggest issues that they had as far as like problematic. I mean, I don't think Agiye Hall is even with the program at this moment. Like, I still think he's still, so that's telling to go from a guy that goes to Alabama to literally is not with anyone else at this time frame. But yeah, even though it's whatever it is, he's just leery about it. Catch. It's just not as it's. Well,
small. I guarantee you, if that edge position doesn't work out this year, and they lean on young guys, and it proves to be a problem, he'll probably turn around and have a very different feel for it potentially next year. Because these are gambles that he's taking to some degree, relying on these unproven players. Personally, I would tamper and violate NCAA rules by getting word out to somebody who's proven that if you come here, there's NIL dollars to be made, there's playing time to be grabbed. I don't know. I'd find a way to get it in the ear of somebody who's probably from the state of Texas, playing somewhere out in the Pac-12 or wherever, All-America Conference, wherever there is a former 3-star guy that's made good. That's what I would do. But
they tried that last year, though, to a certain degree. And like O'Shawn Mathis, I mean, just ends up going to Nebraska and being okay. But it wasn't – he had that resume that you thought to yourself, you get that guy and that he's going to have the impact. He goes to Nebraska and we just never really heard from him again. I'm saying
a one-person sample size, good or bad, dictate your future planning.
I mean,
but O'Shawn didn't have a great year at TCU the year before he transferred, right? So he wasn't a guarantee, like Catch, like say guarantee on the box. But I think you bring up a good point, Catch, that it's kind of a double-edged sword. You bring in a guy like that, are you going to stunt the growth of a guy like Anthony Hill if you bring in a linebacker? And it's a little bit less risky to not bring those guys in, to avoid bringing those guys. When you got guys like Anthony Hill and Colton Vasek waiting in the wings, that's your new toy. That's your
you recruit those guys for a reason, man. Like, I mean, people dance in the streets when they commit.
Yeah, exactly.
For a reason.
I don't know,
they
man.
don't have that guy. Anthony Hill and these dudes at the edge are not the same thing. I mean, Anthony was a Rivals 150 guy.
Yeah, well, Colton Vasek's kind of in that same.
What about Vasek, though? Wasn't he a 5-star?
He's borderline, but he's the youngest of the group. I mean, at this point, he's not even on the top 3 as you charted them today because they still got to figure out Dre Bledsoe. So you've got Finkley, Burke, and Bledsoe. All of those guys were very good prospects. None of them were true super blues per, let's just say, Rivals rankings alone.
Pretty close, man. I mean, you got schools like Oregon and Oklahoma who wanted
pretty close. That
Burke was committed to Michigan, and Bledsoe was wanted by A&M. I mean,
the numbers between the Super Blues, that next tier, the historical production levels of guys developing into NFL players, NFL draft picks, impact college guys, it falls off a cliff. And those guys,
those 3 guys that I mentioned, well, I guess where'd Burke wind up? Was he a Rivals?
He was a 5.9 mid 4-star for Rivals.
Okay, I don't remember what his numerical ranking was. But Bledsoe, I believe, I don't know if he maintained his Rivals 100. And I mean,
they were all 5.9 guys.
Vasek was.
They're not Anthony Hill level prospects.
No, I mean, I get your point, but there's still plenty of reason to be excited about those guys.
The math says those guys hit about 1 out of every 4 times. The good news is Texas has like 3 or 4 of those guys. So you'd think you're going to hit on one of those guys. You're just asking to hit earlier than maybe historically those guys tend to. Year 3, the light switch comes on. Certainly by year 4. It is a lot to ask of these guys who've never really – I mean, at this point, Finkley has the most game reps of hit over 100, if I'm not mistaken, whereas Burke had 39. I'm trying to memorize all of Alex's numbers. It's just a lot to ask of guys that haven't really even been strong backup players to jump – because I don't think any of these – does anybody think – Texas has an edge player who's better than Ovi Ogofu was last year at this point?
Probably. I mean, if you just look at what Burke did on a small sample size, he was much better. It's like 5 times better. But it's
the sample size is really small though.
Very, 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 very small. But it's hard to be Ovi. I mean, he's better than Thornton, but
I'll take the combination of the young guys that Texas has over Ovi. Absolutely.
Take them, man. Take the devil you don't know instead of the devil you do, especially when the devils that you don't know come with such, elite pedigree. They've been good in small samples. Just, I mean, like I said, it's going to take cycling through these guys, finding what you got. Hopefully you find lightning in a bottle, like Ketch says. This 1 and 3, 1 and 4 stuff. If that's the case, you should hit on one.
You should. I think we all think Burke is the guy that if we had to place $20 on it, if you had to put $20 on either Finkley or Burke this year, game 1 being better than Ovi, who would you put your $20 on? On where you have a $20 bet you'd make if I gave you Finkley or Burke as the game 1 starter playing. Roughly how many snaps per game does that position get during the course of a game? Was Ovi playing about 60 snaps a game? Somewhere between 50 and 60?
Let's see. So if you just look at the participation for Ovi over the course of the season, it's like 29 snaps, 57 snaps, 56, 73, 54, 35, 58, 74, 59, 52, 39, 71.
All right, depends on the game. But roughly.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, like, versus in the game, so like ULM, he sat out a bunch, But the game versus Bama, 57, UTSA, 56, Tech, 73, West Virginia, 54, OU only 35. I don't know but that was 63% of snaps. 58 versus Iowa State, 74 versus Oklahoma State, 59 versus Kansas State, 52 versus TCU, only 39 versus Kansas. I forgot how the Kansas game went last year. What was the game script of that game? Do you guys remember off the top of your head?
In what way?
Was that another close Kansas game?
No.
So it was a blowout? I've totally forgotten. I can't believe I forgot.
Well, that should tell you everything about that game right there, Alex.
Yeah, so definitely the 2 lowest rates were versus Kansas and versus ULM.
Kansas
Other than that, he's playing
55-14.
Okay, yeah. So that's why I forgot. Talk about a snoozer. Yeah, so I'd say somewhere between mid-50s to 70 or so snaps. I don't think any of those guys are going to have. You're not going to go into the season with one guy off the edge who's going to be doing that again. I don't think it's possible.
Hey, my bold prediction, if you're saying Finkley and Burke, I'll go out on a limb and I'll take Bledsoe and Vosick. I think by the end of this year, Bledsoe and Vosick.
What about game 1?
Game 1, they're going to go with the veterans. What is it?
They don't have any veterans. That's what I'm saying.
Well, okay, guys who've been in the program, and I know Bledsoe's been in the program a year, but remember, he didn't play his senior year. I mean, last year was kind of a throwaway year for him. Excuse me. I think game 1, it'll be Finkley and Ethan Burke. If you're asking me 5-6 games into the year, I think Bledsoe and Vosick are going to be your more productive players.
Interesting. Onward.
Alex, give me odds and we'll take a bet.
We're at a point now where I can't keep track of all the bets that have been placed.
Well, no one's paying up on bets, and so
I'm not betting
loopholes for these guys' bets.
I haven't lost one yet.
I'm not. There's no way I'm betting against Colton Vosick. Come on now. How could I do that?
Yeah, I think he's going to be the best of the bunch.
I'll just answer real quick. I mean, I knew you were going to Anwar, but for me, like Ketch's original question before Jason changed it, I'm going to say Ethan Burke is my pick between those two guys if it's a binary. Just let's say that each guy plays, it's who's the first game against? Who's the first game? The second game's Bama. I've forgotten. I can't believe I don't have it memorized at this point. Some kind of ULM or something. Whatever it is.
It's
Rice, right?
Rice.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, versus Rice, you play. So let's say they play 60 snaps, 30 snaps each. I think Ethan Burke would get more done on his 30 snaps than Justice Finkley, just based on the sample size that we've seen out of those guys.
You think we'd probably see a split, though?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it would be absurd not to. It would be absurd not to. Like I've said now 3 times, they're going to have to cycle through these guys to figure out what they have. They can't just go in here and just put the label of Justice Finkley. That's our edge guy. That would make absolutely no sense.
Anwar?
So I I've always been a little bit high on Burke, so I won't go away from that. But I like I said, there's something to be said. I think he would get the lion's share. I just think I like Finkley. Don't get me wrong, but when we're talking about being long, strong, kind of that big mold of defensive linemen and that they want down in the trenches, he seems to fit where Sark is heading with that whole situation, with those kind of guys. And so that's why I think Burke would be the guy that I lean on the most.
Alex, we're going to go into parting shots in just a second. We're creeping up on the hour mark. I wanted to just get one last thought on this defensive line conversation. Let's switch it around a little bit because they've got Broughton playing behind Sorrell at defensive end. Would you rather, if all things were equal and it was just about the choice I'm about to make you make and not how all of these other pieces might fit together at that other position we've been talking about, the buck position, Finkley or Broughton as a primary backup behind Sorrell? If it was just about those two guys.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it would have to do with the game plan and sort of the game flow and the script of what they're trying to do, whether it's more of like a sub package thing. I'm just, because you look at Vernon Broughton, he's a 300-pound guy, right? Like he's a big dude. He's played most defensive tackle, but like Alfred Collins last year, whenever they go to these games versus the Kansas States or these teams that are going to want to run on you, where you just, I don't know if it'll be the same with K-State next year, but when you go to these teams that they're going to want to run on you, there's not going to be as many plays in the game, stuff like that, where they go a little bit bigger. We saw last year, Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, both those guys would line up at that sort of that pseudo defensive end spot. Whereas, and then Baron Sorrell, who generally plays the strong side defensive end, would fall into like more of a weak side defensive end type of player, right? And so I think that whenever you see them cycling through Vernon Broughton in a situation like that, wherever he's playing on a defensive end, that to me feels a little bit more like a sub package type of deal where he's just getting worked in there during the base work in practice, just because that's the best way to get him in and to get him cross training. I think he'll play both. I think I know we've seen Alfred Collins through the course of practice playing both. Alfred Collins is sometimes lined up as a defensive end, but to me, it feels more sub packagey. The only thing that gives me pause with that is they were working out of base today in those front seven drills, and that's where he was lined up in base. They specifically had him there in base whenever they could have gotten Aaron Bryant out of the lineup, right? They could have moved Alfred Collins down to nose, put Vernon Broughton a defensive tackle, and then just bumped up whatever Bledsoe or Christopher Ross over there on the other side. They didn't do that. So to me, I think from just a base perspective, I would rather have Justice Finkley backing him up because it feels to me like he brings just a little bit more juice in the pressure game, right? I've never really seen. Have you guys ever really seen like I don't know how well Broughton can, turn the corner and get to the quarterback and stuff like that. Not that Finkley's been a maestro, but so I guess Finkley in a vacuum in base. But I think that having that versatility for a guy like Broughton could be helpful in sub packages. And if that's where he ends up being Sorrell's straight up, like if that's where he ends up being his backup, to me, that's surprising. That'll be a revelation and something that we'll keep an eye on through the rest of practices.
All right, guys, let's go into parting shots. We'll wrap this bad boy up. Anwar, you got anything for parting shots today?
Yeah, just the one thing, it's kind of a small thing. I did ask Sarkeesian a little bit about Brennan Thompson today, because obviously, as we've talked about spring, I thought it was also relevant to mention that football players on campus but not participating because he's running track. And Sarkeesian, kind of, I tried to put a little bit of a positive spin on it, and he said, it's a challenging thing when people are doing trying to do two sports. He talked about the difference between football shape and track shape, and he just kind of started to say fast is fast, and they saw a little glimpse of Brennan as far as what he can do. But and they said they'll get him back in the summer. But can't help but think that at the end of the day, with guys who are on campus right now, the Jontes of the world, DeAndre Morris, who are looking good and having an opportunity to play, that Brennan's probably falling a little bit behind as far as this whole wide receiver race. You want the young man to have fun, and so I'm hoping he's having fun doing track and enjoying himself with that prospect. But the Thompson thing just it did come up today, and I thought it was worth mentioning. So we'll see what happens with him when he gets back in the summer, if he can catch up to the guys who are starting to make a little bit of noise.
Jason, what about you?
I know we're primarily football focused right now and basketball focused, of course, but there is a junior day coming up this weekend for Texas. Kind of gradually been working on compiling a list. I'm going to hit that pretty hard today, so keep an eye on Orangebloods. Probably tonight or tomorrow I'll have a more thorough list, but I'm kind of looking at the guys who have confirmed. There's a Rivals 100 2025 running back out of Florida. Tavion Swint will be there. Freddie DeBose. Daniel Cruz, one of the top offensive line targets. Blake Frazier, offensive lineman from Vandergrift. Corey Williams. Reiner Swanson, a tight end that Texas really wants out of Cali. Colin Simmons, number one player in the state. I probably should have led with him. He'll be there. Nigel Smith literally texted me while we're recording or broadcasting this Modcast. The defensive end out of Melissa, he'll be there. Alex January, the defensive tackle out of Duncanville, was originally going to be at Oklahoma on Saturday. Bo Davis called him last week, said, dude, we'd really like to have you in Austin. He changed up his plans. He's coming to UT now. So that was confirmed to me yesterday. So that's a big development. Texas getting Alex January, Terrence Hibbler, Rivals 100 guy, defensive lineman out of Mississippi, Hunter Modden, Texas commitment, who has kind of been on shaky ground, but they'll get him back on campus. We'll keep adding to this list, but those are some of the big names we'll be tracking. So be a big weekend, man. You got basketball Friday, right? Hopefully things go well for Texas. Basketball Sunday. Did someone tell me that today baseball team, I think, starts conference play? We got recruiting junior day, football, maybe scrimmage. I don't know when they're going to scrimmage exactly. Lots going on, man, but we will be front and center covering recruiting and covering a junior day on Saturday on the 40 acres.
And they're having Sarkeesian's having a coaching clinic on Friday, and
Friday and Saturday,
yeah. And I believe, if I'm correct, he said Kyle Shanahan will be speaking at the clinic.
That's right. He's the
wow,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. That's another.
Returns.
Yeah. So that's always fun because obviously we know some high school coaches. Sometimes they show up to those things. It's kind of sometimes neat to get their perspective on, hey, what'd you think about what you heard or from the coaching clinic or saw at practice? So we'll be tapping into a lot of different sources and a lot of different things this weekend. There's going to be a lot to report
on. Alex.
Yeah, just more of the same. Should have a lot of stuff this week. Big weekend with baseball, basketball, all that stuff. I've been really impressed with the coverage of the coverage that these guys have had for this stuff. I've been impressed with the basketball team. It's like I don't follow it. Like I don't follow it really at all. I only have so much space in my brain to, with all the NFL stuff and college stuff and watching the high school players and everything. Like I don't have the space for other sports, but just watching Texas basketball, it's like, geez, man, they're gonna have to probably hire this dude to be the head coach and stuff. Like it's crazy, right? Like I'm sure you guys have had podcasts about that and everything. I'm sure you guys all have takes about what's gonna happen with that. But just from a complete outsider's perspective, it kind of seems like that to me. The other thing, I'll send you guys some pictures in Slack, but my wife bought 10 new chicks, like little chicks to grow up to be chickens. And like, we don't have a coop big enough for them. So I've been having to build this chicken coop. This thing is like a Noah's Ark. I'm telling you, this thing's like the Taj Mahal of damn chicken coops, dude. It's a tank. You're never going to believe it. So I'm wrapping up. I'm getting close to being done. I got to put the roof on it. But once I get the roof on, I'm going to send you guys pictures like from start to finish. I've been taking photos every day. It's taken me like 10 days so far. This thing's a monster. So can't wait to show you guys in Slack. Maybe I'll tweet out some photos of it too, so some of the listeners can check it out. I'm sure they're all just dying to see the Noah's Ark.
Don't you still have a cat, Alex? How's
I
that
don't
going to
have
work
a
with
cat.
baby chicks running around?
I don't have a cat. My daughter has one. He isn't allowed outside anymore ever since the Coyotes got the other one.
Alex, you want to hear my baby chick story? It's real quick.
Sure.
When I was 3, I won a baby chick at like a church Easter egg hunt. So they gave me this little baby chick, and I still have a picture of when I'm like 3 years old, and I had this baby chick in the palm of my hands. And then about an hour after that picture was taken, I think my mom put me down for a nap, and the neighbor kid that lived next door took a hammer and smashed the baby chick.
Oh, whoa! Did he grow up to be a serial killer? What the hell's wrong with his neighbor?
I do believe the boy turned out to be
That's one of the first
prison. Let's say that.
What's one of the first signs is cruelty towards these animals, man. This is wild.
Took a hammer, smashed my baby chick. It's the only baby chick I ever had in my entire life.
Well, your mom wasn't going to let you keep her anyway. I mean, those things.
Yeah, I don't know what the eventual end goal, the end game with the baby chick was going to be. Maybe this kid Wendell did us all a favor.
I think whoever in the state penitentiary system is guarding him behind lock and key right now is doing all of us a favor.
And Wendell's got mad issues.
My parting shot is simply to remind everybody, the basketball game on Friday is the biggest basketball game in the program history at Texas since they went up against a guy by the name of Derrick Rose in the Elite Eight back in 2008. We are officially at this point where the Longhorns have been deeper into the tournament than they've been in 15 years.
That wasn't the same year as Carmelo Anthony, was it, Catch?
No, Carmelo was in 2003.
Okay, man, did I get drunk in New Orleans that weekend?
That could have been a parting shot, sounds like.
It could have been. So it should be a good weekend, Probably can't be stressed. On the football side, you've got the coaching clinics. We already mentioned that. A scrimmage at some point. Colin Simmons is in town, along with Nigel Smith, for that matter. The two best defensive ends in the state will be in town this weekend, in addition to the baseball team. But the women's basketball team, did they get taken to the woodshed last night? But here's my parting shot. If you get your ass kicked at home by 20-something points, don't go into the congratulatory handshake line and talk shit to the person that just dropped 20 on you. You had your chance to make your statement when the game was being played. If you're a Texas women's basketball player and you've got a problem with somebody on the Louisville team, maybe something should have been done during the game to keep that young woman from basically having her will and her way with you. Nothing comes off worse then poor sportsmanship after the game is over. I'm sure we've all seen the video of that. I don't know if Alex has, because I don't know if that was in his orbit, but
what was their beef with that girl? Do we know? I just saw the video.
The beef was that she scorched them.
No, tough shit. I mean, we got, you know.
I thought the beef. I thought I heard something like maybe the allegedly that player had dropped, you know, may have used, like, called her a B or something to that effect, like, allegedly. And so, like, it was kind of like, if you do that again, I'm gonna whatever.
Yeah, okay. That was decided on the court. You know, I mean, if this was a bunch of dudes, that wouldn't have happened. I don't know. Guys get called a lot worse things than the B word on the court, although that's certainly in play as well, on a shot-by-shot basis in pretty much every level of basketball. It rubbed me the wrong way. They were losing by like 25 at one point in the fourth quarter. Just make some shots, and then you don't have to worry about it costing the young lady in the layup in the handshake line afterwards, because you thought she rubbed you the wrong way. I mean, she rubbed everybody the wrong way. She made every shot she took, it seemed like. I'd probably be throwing out the B words too if every time I took a shot it went in. All right. I'd be real frisky at that point. I'd be calling you worse things than that. For myself, Alex, who probably, you didn't see that, did you, Alex?
No.
Yeah.
I did not.
Anwar, who did. Jason, I'm pretty sure, who did. And Blake for producing, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us all day long today. You guys be good. We got the Drunk Uncle tomorrow. Lots in store for you throughout the week here on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. Until next time, you guys be good.